Now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. I can't decide whether I should be edified or convicted. If you let these words sink into your bones, you can feel a sense that everything just might be all right, even when everything isn't all right right now. Man, do I need a dose of that right now. How about you? A bit of everything will be all right, even if it's not all right right now. But I don't know if I should lean into that, or if I should spend some time leaning into this other sense that I get. This sense that words might be about I don't like it. That's what conviction feels like sometimes. Conviction is a thing, so maybe I should sit with that a while. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, tell my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Do you see what I mean? The words are buoyant to the soul. They almost make me want to break out in singing. Fortunately for all of us, I have become quite talented at not singing, and I'd be happy to put that on display right now. But you do see, even in just the words, what I mean. Steal away. He calls me by the thunder, the trumpet sounds way down in my sanctified soul. Steal away to Jesus. A little kernel of goodness that just sits defiantly in the midst of a world where hope can be hard to come by, like a balm in Gilead, to name another. Spirituals. Songs composed by those whose lives were not their own, whose labor was not to their own benefit, whose families were someone else's property, who were bought and sold and enslaved right here in our beloved nation. Spirituals dot our liturgy from time to time, and rightly so. We are in the business of hope in this place. In the history-bathed, molten words of spirituals have the capacity to flow into every area of our existence, giving us the sense that on the other side of the struggle, yea, even within the struggle, there is a peace, there is a joy, there is a hope that simply cannot be taken away. And even still, I don't know if I should be edified or feel convicted. There is a side to spirituals that I, by virtue of my identity, can know about, but will never fully know in my bones. You see, there is, whether you've known it or not, a message within the spirituals that is hidden away. In fact, there's some evidence that conductors on the Underground Railroad, such as Harriet Tubman or William Still and others, used literally encoded music to communicate instructions to those they were hoping to convey northward. Traveling shoes, chariots, wheels. If you hear those referenced in a song, and if you're privy to the code, then you can know that somebody, somewhere is mobilizing, heading out, getting ready to escape. Swing low, sweet chariot might let one know that someone will soon be near to help with the journey out of here. A band of angels coming to help from across the Jordan River is suspiciously like those committed Underground Railroad conductors swinging low below the Ohio river. But of course, even without those literally encoded portions of the music, there is still something hidden away in the spirituals. There is a hope that transcends not only the circumstance of the moment, but somehow resigns itself even in the middle of such great anguish. It is impossible to conceive of a greater mistake, says Frederick Douglass, to think that the singing of slaves is a sign of current contentment or even a feeble hope that things will get better. The songs of the slave represent the sorrows of his heart, he says, and he is relieved by them only as an aching heart is relieved by its tears. The songs themselves are a way through. Not to happiness or to freedom necessarily, just through. But this is what I will never know in my bones. My heritage stems not from those who sang the songs, of course, but from those who overheard them, none the wiser to their hidden messages. One can imagine, can't you? Slaveholders, overseers, hearing these songs rise in the fields or from the slave quarters, and maybe even learning the melodies themselves, beginning to hum along, even singing a few lines under their breath, all the while never knowing they were singing the songs of their own indictment. That's the part of slavery's heritage that belongs to me. Not everyone who will hear this sermon shares that side of the legacy of slavery, but for those who do, it does us no good to say, but I didn't do it. No, I didn't have a hand in slavery, and I wasn't around for Jim Crow either. But the bloodlines that flow into my very veins, the lessons taught by my grandfather's father and his father and his father and his father and so on, have all been bathed in the thinking and the justifications used by those who didn't even know they were humming away at their own conviction. And my dear friends, and let us put a fine point on this one, I'm speaking for a moment to my white friends. Our history matters deeply. Look at the evidence around us. BIPOC people suffer disproportionately bad outcomes in every phase of modern life. And that got that way somehow. No, we weren't a part of it back then, but we're a part of it now. So you see, when I hear spirituals, I can't decide if I should be edified or convicted. It's a lot like reading Luke's Beatitudes, you know. Blessed are you who are poor, who are hungry, who weep. But woe to you who are rich, who are full, who are laughing. I can't decide here whether to be edified or convicted either. There have been times in my life, like after losing my employment some years ago, spouse in grad school, for sale sign going up in the front yard, when I felt like maybe the blessed are you part was especially for me. But my life is reasonably comfortable, and I have the capacity to stand so far outside of solidarity with those who are really hurting in the world that I don't know. Maybe the woe is for me. Luke didn't make things any easier when he neglected to spiritualize his Beatitudes like Matthew did. Both gospel writers have these sayings we call the Beatitudes, and they're close enough to one another in their writings to think that they must have come from some common source, but not from Mark, which is their most common source. So wherever these sayings came from, we don't have the original, but we do know that one gospel writer chose to spiritualize them. Blessed are you who are poor in spirit, says Matthew. Well, yeah. I've been sad lots of times and even depressed on occasion, so I can see myself in that situation. But Luke makes things profoundly more uncomfortable by setting his blessings and woes in the concrete world. He stopped just shy of giving an adjusted gross income threshold, but poor means something real. And rich means something real for Luke, as do hunger and sorrow. So am I edified or convicted by Luke's Beatitudes? The key here is an authentic assessment of where I stand. Those who were full in Luke's day were those who had the ability and the gall to store up enough resource to make it through the year or more than a year, and to sit on those stores even while others were hungry. So is my security more important to me than someone else's immediate well-being? If so, I may have less to look forward to in the world as God longs for it to be. If I am hungry now, either because that's my natural position or because I have shared my way into hunger, then God's hopes for the world are looking good for me and for those who have shared with me. The truth is, though, a purely objective and fully informed understanding of where I stand probably isn't really possible, and ultimately, not really the point. Don't get me wrong. As we've said, there is objectivity in Luke's Beatitudes. There are real-world issues at play, just no particular measuring stick. But the tension itself between blessed are you and woe to you, the tension alone is instructive. If I allow myself to feel the weight of the woes and gain a vivid sense of what it means to live in a way that is disappointing to God, or, in the words of the prophets, even putrid to God, then I am compelled to wonder in what ways I can add measures of hunger or weeping or poverty to my life. Because we can firmly say that God is not interested in suffering for suffering's sake, we can infer that adding those measures to our life doesn't mean asceticism, suffering for suffering's sake, but rather it means solidarity. What measure of what I have and who I am, material or otherwise, might I be able to go without if it meant some other might go with? Joining someone in their misery will certainly get some misery on me, but blessed are you who weep, especially together. But in the same way as the weight of the woe draws me toward solidarity, so too does any suffering that comes my way on that account draw me toward blessing. Each measure of sacrifice we each make for one another only draws the world that much closer to a world that doesn't rely on excess or exploitation in the search for blessing. So, am I edified or convicted by Luke's Beatitudes? Yes. But am I edified or convicted by the spirituals? Yes. Those same people who hummed away at their own conviction, not knowing the fullness of the songs they sang, are the ones who set the world in which we live in motion. And it would be naive to say that the world came to a complete halt, that world came to a complete halt with emancipation or with civil rights or with the conviction of the killers of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. The legacy of slavery is alive, and it's a legacy which I cannot passively disassociate myself from. None of us can passively disassociate ourselves from it. The work before us may ask some of us to do things we'd rather not, to give in ways we don't think we can, to push when it's uncomfortable, or push when pushed against. The woes of the spirituals compel us to do so. But the blessed are yous of the spirituals remind us that liberation for anyone is liberation for everyone. Our willingness to stand in when convicted of our part in the legacy of slavery, still alive today, and of our role in dismantling it, is actually a part of building a world that does not rely on exploitation in the pursuit of blessing. In other words, if we heed the call of the woes, then blessed are we all. Amen.